Just who asked for an X-Files reboot? In the wise words of Agent Smith, find them and destroy them. This is the last picture show with Rahim Khan, and I am not even reacting. I'm incensed to the news that none other than Ryan Coogler is rebooting the X-Files. I mean, do we need an X-Files reboot? No, we don't. I mean, wait. So I'd read about this maybe a couple of months ago, maybe a year ago or something like that, that they were thinking of, doing an X-Files reboot, revisiting this cherished, hallowed science fiction paranormal thriller series created by Chris Carter. And I don't know, somewhere along the way, at first I thought it was Jordan Peele who was attached, but no, we'll be talking about him a little later in this show. But apparently, Ryan Coogler's name was attached to this. Apparently, because I wouldn't say this is like a childhood dream, but I think it's been a lifelong ambition of his to revisit the series that we're not boomers, are we? Or millennials? I don't know what we're called, but a lot of us grew up watching. This is, of course, starring David Duchovny and Gillian Anderson, and what's it called? Created by Chris Carter. It was a Fox show. First episode aired somewhere in 1993, and we had 9 seasons or 12 seasons. Of course, a cultural phenomena it was. We got 2 movies out of it. A bunch of other actors, like, for example, Robert Patrick, that lady, person who played Skinner, Kumail Nanjiani. Well, he was, of course, only in one episode. Lots of what's it called guest stars, and even I wouldn't even call it a reboot, but like a revisit. We got to revisit 2 seasons of it back in 2016. So, like, all in all, I think the X-Files story is told. It's done and dusted. Why? Why then do we need a reboot? Now, of course, no, it's not even a convenient answer. It's the most obvious one. I mean, execs at 20th Century Fox must be thinking, hey, wait a second. This is a show that maybe, your parents might have watched. But I mean, if you're appealing to, a younger audience, say, for example, those born in the art or who are now sort of 20, between 20 and 25, then, sort of they completely missed it. So now let's dust this off, take it off of the shelf, dust it off, and sort of repackage it in, and I hate doing air quotes, but I'm going to because this is exactly how sort of it was in the article, a more diverse cast. It pains me. It pains me because the thing is that first, again, whatever I think stories they had to tell, whatever sort of like, I's they had to dot and T's they had to cross, and whatever I guess Chris Carter had to say with this show has already been said. I mean, the thing is that you had, again, I don't know if it's 9 or 12 seasons, but I mean, you had like hundreds of episodes to sort of like, get into at least the mythos of this universe that Carter had built. We got to know intimately Mulder and Scully and the smoking man and what's it called, the lone gunman, and all of these various characters, the Black Ooze guy and all, Krychek, all of these different people. We got to have seasons where sort of Mulder is, gone, Scully has a baby, the world apparently ends. We had everything. I mean, sort of the length and breadth was covered. So why then do we have to have now a show that just because now he is, I'm not saying Coogler is flavor of the month. He has been riding a high, well, very frankly, ever since Creed. But he's never done it for me. As a writer or a director, I think there's nothing remarkable about him. And I hate to say that he's a diversity hire. I apologize, but like honestly, I find that there are much better. In fact, I alluded to them. I alluded to him at the beginning of the show. I think Jordan Peele, maybe this in the hands of Jordan Peele would have been much better. Before I even complete that sentence or that thought, do we all remember Jordan Peele's executive produced reboot of The Twilight Zone and how bad that was? I mean, is that not a lesson that execs and maybe even Ryan Coogler and sort of, people who are in and around this project or because the thing is that the pilot has been greenlit and we've already had the first casting with that lady whose name I'm forgetting, something Deadwyler. I'm not sure if she is playing Scully or I don't know. Um, but at least the female, what's it called, lead has been cast. And of course, she's African American. Now, let's address certain things. Firstly, Jordan Peele. Now, Jordan Peele, of course, after Key and Peele, yeah, after Key and Peele went on to have, and still has, in fact, this career which I never expected from a comedian to be sort of like, this horror maven. And with a unique voice in at least American cinema in producing very interesting movies. I mean, first of all, we have the seminal Get Out, the one in between. I'm forgetting the name of that one, but that was pretty shit. But then he came back swinging with no. So, like, this guy, I respect. I think that he has the goods as a filmmaker, as a writer. But he failed with The Twilight Zone. I mean, The Twilight Zone was really bad. For anyone who has seen the original, I mean, A, it paled in comparison, but then B, when I have a feeling that it was a CBS show, I think it was. I mean, it was so suffused with, and I hate for this to be sort of like, a common accusation for against most shows that are being produced nowadays. But like, why is it that sort of when you do make a show that is at least trying or at least attempting to deal with contemporary issues, they are invariably accused of being woke. And yes, I think that's fair, but they're really bad at it. They're like so on the nose. They lack all subtlety and nuance and just honestly good writing. I mean, those are really bad. I remember, man, I sat through the entire season of Twilight Zone. I was wondering, man, what's going on here? I mean, you know, CBS can be accused of a lot. And I feel that the writer's room was given an agenda and they were like, hey, much like the Twilight Zone of the past, which of course did dealt with um, social issues, cultural issues plaguing that time. I mean, this writer's room just lacked, I think, just the ability to sort of at least convincingly, address or sort of even debate those topics. So, I mean, you already have an example of taking a cherished, beloved property and doing a piss poor job at it. And sort of, again, at the outset, sort of claiming or at least attempting, endeavoring to make the show more inclusive, more diverse, and all that jazz. And here we have it again with, of course, something like the X Files. Now, the thing is that, sure, I think there was, can't remember any sort of notable African American characters, or for that matter, any POC, sorry for the air quotes again, characters in the X Files. It's slipping. All I can think of right now is Agent Hollis from Millennium, which is to start as other like sister show to the X Files. Now, if they ever try to reboot that, I'll be up in arms because Millennium is one of my favorites. Okay, but how does making the show more diverse. Okay, like for example, you've already cast an African American lady, the female lead. Now we have to see who the male lead is going to be. But like, sort of, why is that alone reason enough to reboot a show? It's not. If you were so dead set on having a show that is oriented around the African American community or any other community for that matter, why don't you take inspiration from, I think it was a HBO show, Lovecraft Country. Now, Lovecraft Country, starring Jonathan Majors and a bunch of other actors, Wunmi Misaku, who was also in Sinners, a bunch of these actors were in this show about, of course, H.P. Lovecraft's, uh, sort of universe, like all of that stuff, and it's set in, Jim Crow 40s, 50s America, and it's about sort of that sort of African American black experience while dealing with this horror. And they did, I think, a very, very good job at it, because the thing is that the antagonists in that are like these white supremacist magicians. There's just a lot of these things, and I thought that was, look, a was taking something like Lovecraft, who had like, I think he had a racist bone in him. I'm not very familiar with his work, but he's been accused of that in the past. But like taking that and sort of like, putting it on sort of black community, or at least sort of mixing it up. And it was a genuinely good original show. Why do they do this where they take stuff, stuff that's already existent, and say, okay, wait, maybe this doesn't sit well with modern audiences. Let's change this and make this into, I don't know, an all sort of like, uh, POC, what's it called, oriented show or focus show or led show. Why do they do that? Come up with your own stuff, man. I mean, if you could do that with something like Sinners, which, as you guys know, for those of you who are familiar with this page, um, I reviewed and reviewed bombed because I hated it. But again, he came up with an original idea for that, in which again it was a vampire story set in the deep South in Mississippi, and sort of predominantly black cast. Oh, you got that. So come up with your own X Files, man. I mean, call it whatever you want, but like, I don't understand why you have to do this. Um, Forget, of course, the diversity card, right? Forget that. Let's come back to something more, somewhat more, I think, relevant. And that relevance is, uh, you just know this show's going to suck. I mean, yes, Chris Carter and Frank Spotnitz and all of the other writers on the X Files had their good days and their bad. I mean, sort of, it wasn't all sort of like, tonally, like, sort of consistent and fantastic and stuff like that. But like, that is, I think, the nature of TV, and that you do get to have like your bum notes, you do get to have your off days, and it's not always going to be fantastic. And honestly, for most of Coogler's at Reese career, I have not been impressed. I mean, all of the Creed ones, not I didn't like them, to be honest. I didn't like Black Panther, and I definitely did not like Sinners. So I would be, if they really, really had to do this, I would feel a lot more comfortable with someone like Jordan Peele doing this, because at least he's tried and tested when it does come to um what's it called, the genre, science fiction, horror, thriller, whatever. Right. I was wondering what Chris Carter had to say about all of this. Apparently he's given it his blessings, but I don't think there's anything you can do when I'm sure that the right to X Files and its characters and all of that stuff are owned by 20th Century Fox. So sort of, even if you are the creator, you're going to see like with George R. Martin and D.B. Weiss and David Benioff, what they did with Game of Thrones. I think you're just going to see uh, your creation just go to die. And I have a pretty good feeling that that's exactly what this X Files reboot is going to be.